Hi, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for joining us today for this webinar brought to you by Innovate Hawaii, part of the Hawaii Technology Development Corporation, short for HTDC, and the Hawaii Chamber of Commerce, and the Hawaii State Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism. My name is Ellen, and I'm the Economic Development Specialist here at HTDC. So some housekeeping before we dive into the webinar. Firstly, this session will be recorded and will be sent to all who registered, so don't worry about taking notes throughout the session. Secondly, please keep all your microphones and cameras disabled throughout the session. And feel free to send in your questions during the session through the chat function. We will address them during the Q&A portion of the webinar. Additionally, today's webinar is a start of a series of webinars designed to assist business owners with e-commerce and digital marketing. If you're interested in attending other webinars, please visit the link that we'll be leaving in the chat box. If you are a business registered with DCCA and in need of e-commerce or digital marketing assistance, we also welcome you to apply for 3 free hours of consulting time with a vendor we will match you with. The application form is accessible through the same link that we will provide in the chat box. Please note that you would have to be registered with DCCA and opportunities for assistance are limited, so do hurry. Today, we have Akemi of Hidden Gears, who will be joining us today to share best practices of UX UI, short for user experience and user interface, so that you can ensure that your website meets the demands of the modern day consumer. Akemi is the head of design and project management at Hidden Gears. Her background in the arts informs her approach to crafting thoughtful interfaces that balances beauty with technical performance and extensibility. She was a fellow of the Good Work Institute and a contributor to the Shopify Partners blog. Hidden Gears offers the full range of services of an e-commerce agency with the friendly, personal, and innovative service of a small business. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Akemi to take the lead for today's session.
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction, Ellen, and hello, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join this workshop. I see a couple familiar faces through HTDC in the past, so it's good to see you guys. I will just be sharing a deck and walking through some principles, but since there's a smaller group, feel free to also put into the chat just maybe 1 or 2 sentences about how familiar you are with e-commerce and sort of design, web design. That'll just help me kind of, speak to you guys. So I'm just gonna set up my screen share here and take a couple minutes. All right. All right. As Ellen mentioned, I am one of the partners in Hidden Gears. My partner, Paolo, who's shown there, started the company in 2016. We formerly were based in upstate New York. I'm originally from Hawaii, from the Big Island, so we made the move back here and have also been working as a fully remote team with our developer and partners back in the East Coast. We do focus on e-commerce specifically, and within that, I'm the design lead and project manager, so I'm speaking to the clients and kind of analyzing their needs and turning those into designs that both look wonderful and have really robust functionality to help them sell online, help them increase their sales online, or optimize their sales if they already have a site. So just in terms of this workshop, UX UI, some of you guys might not know exactly what that means. I think Ellen gave a brief primer, and it's really sort of an industry term for essentially not just the design of the website, how it looks, but how it works. Is it intuitive? What is the sort of all of those little actions that you get users to take? And we use, devices every day, very easily, very intuitively, not necessarily realizing that, it's a whole, several people's jobs to kind of be behind the scenes crafting that experience for you. So this is going to be a good primer on the importance of UX UI if you're doing anything with a website in general, but also e-commerce in particular. So I'm going to talk through some of the best practices for, a product page, a sales page, that kind of thing. Because within e-commerce, there's a lot of expected behaviors that we're all used to having, thanks to Amazon, thanks to the proliferation of shopping online. We sort of look for things to work a certain way, and it's good to know what those are so that you don't fall into sort of a low-hanging, you can tackle the low-hanging fruit of your website. So I'm going to guide you through some of those best practices and help you guys bring your websites up a little bit towards the modern best practices there. So the difference between the two things, which is often very confusing, is that UI stands for user interface, and that's typically, at its core level, just how something looks. What are the fonts? What are the colors? How are things arranged on the page? It's typically just limited to that, the sort of flat interface of what you see. UX stands for user experience, and that is how something works. So what happens when I click that button? Am I going to another page? Is it adding something to my cart? Is there some kind of animation that happens that shows me that my click was successful? Is there a color change? That kind of thing. So they're very similar and often spoken of at the same thing, but it's important to kind of distinguish between the two things because you need both in order to create a really good overall user experience of the site. You can't just focus on the aesthetics and how it looks. It actually has to have a function, and that function can oftentimes be much more challenging to think about. If you come from maybe a typical design background, like a graphic design background, in the web, everything is interactive. There's a goal to moving through those pages. You want to capture an action, typically a sale. So there's a lot of things to think about within that. Altogether, they're the overall experience of the person visiting your site from start to finish. So broadly speaking, people also talk about UX as the entire customer journey. What is their first impression when they arrive to the site? Can they sign up for their email list? Is there an email that goes out welcoming them with a discount? All of these things. And typically the success of UX UI is based on how just easy and enjoyable it is for visitors to navigate your store, find what they're looking for, and make a purchase, and feel good about that decision throughout. Never feeling confused, never feeling mystified, and just that process of reassuring the user through design that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So when it's done well, typically we don't even notice this as users. It just works. Our life is easy. It's super fast to make a purchase. I get an email saying that my purchase is being packed, delivered, sent. It creates a lot of security and trust. I'm never really distracted by anything. And even beyond that, I can actually feel delight or sort of joy in certain design moments that are just a little bit extra, and this is where the brand can come in and kind of say, something about the brand values and just add sort of a nice little touch to that digital experience, which we often have a harder time bringing to the customer when we're talking about only online versus in person. So this shouldn't really take away from the goal of the actual product. We don't want design without usability, but there is always the opportunity to create something a little extra for somebody. And finally, it's goal focused. At the end of the day, every decision that you make on the site should be thought of as a strategy to center around the user achieving their task successfully. And a lot of the times, I'll go through it in a little bit of detail, some common areas where people miss this goal. It's not because they're, purposefully trying to dissuade people from buying, but without that strategy of just taking the step back and saying, is this really serving our goals? You can really streamline a lot of your decision making around what makes sense to add in terms of design elements to the site. So here's like a pixelated but really good example of kind of visualizing what I'm saying between user interface and user experience, and also design without understanding a strategy. So on the left, there's a path that has been manufactured and made through a campus. And it guessed that people would want to walk in this path, and that's why they spent all of this time and energy to create that path. On the right is what people actually did themselves, which is the direct line from the point they're going to the point they want to get to. It's faster to just make their own, and they've carved out their own path instead, even though it is not paved, even though it is much more lo-fi. They would rather have that. And so that's sort of the difference. You don't want to be too confident in your own assumptions around what users want and design for them and say, hey, this is what you guys want. It's really good to look and see what is actually the best design based on the user's experience. Do they have input that would make this better? And so for that reason, a lot of our design process comes through surveying and asking questions of the users as well. So when done poorly, in converse to what I said before, it really creates a lot of hurdles the user has to jump through. Sometimes this means they're actively frustrated and might reach out to you saying, the site doesn't work in this way, what have you. But more often than not, most people won't do that. They'll just not take the time to kind of communicate that. They're probably on the go, they're probably distracted. And a lot of these little signals of poor UX or UI can amount to tiny little red flags about the site, especially when we're talking about, e-commerce. That's all about trust. There's payments being passed through, there's money being taken, there's goods that need to ship. You want to do everything that you can to not make the user's journey difficult or frustrating. And so I'll go into a little bit of what those things, those low-hanging fruits are that you can kind of hit to help create a sense of trust. Here's a little bit of a kind of an example of some bad UX out there. Okay, so on the left, we have a basic, checkbox form kind of. It says, please select exactly one, but they've used a checkbox selector instead of a radio button, which only allows you to select one. These are just sort of like basic examples of testing and intuitive things. Part of it is honestly a little bit of common sense, but when we're wearing so many hats and in the design mode, we often just don't actually take the time to test it through and put ourselves in that position. On the right, this isn't actually, it has been debunked as not actually the display from the alert for the, false amber, like a bomb alert that came out. But it shows you kind of an example of how confusing an interface can be and how that can have like real life ramifications for the experience that you don't want people to have. So I believe the real display of this was more like a very, very long drop-down menu, sort of like you see on the right, where everything is presented in the same hierarchy. There's nothing that says, pick this or pick that. And so depending on the data that you're trying to um, provide people and the action that you want them to take, there's different design tricks where a drop-down menu or a display like this where everything is shown at the same sort of hierarchy and importance is not going to help people create the best choice. Another example of bad UI I think we've all probably experienced is the Netflix auto-playing video. I think you guys can all point to some moment in your life where you had a difficult or frustrating experience on a digital device and it just got on your nerves. It caused you to waste extra time. It caused you to like immediately go to mute, this auto playing video, what have you. So it's important, I think, to start with a place of frustration, especially if you're you don't think of yourself as a designer, just to kind of train your powers of observation to look at what is not working for you and then put some words to that. And then overall, besides that, as I mentioned, UX and UI is more than just design. It can cover everything from, does the site load quickly? Is the site easy to navigate? Is it easy to use on a mobile device? Does it render correctly on a mobile device? Is the copy clear and easy to understand? Does it describe the products correctly? Does it describe the best attributes of the products that I want people to know about? Are the visuals also easy to decipher and attractive? Do they show the product correctly? Do they show as many angles of that product that I can afford to get, given that this is the only information that the user has to understand whether to buy something or not? And then lastly, have a lot of the unnecessary steps been removed from the process? So we talk about making the journey easy for people. Usually what that means on e-commerce is removing too much choice, removing too much decision fatigue. Because even though it sounds like people want choice, they really typically want only certain kinds of decisions to be made. And if there's too much choice that they have to make in selecting a product, they tend to get distracted. The likelihood is higher that they will not finish their purchase, that they will have multiple tabs open, that they will go and get to, go on to the next task, say, I'll do this later, and then not follow up. So be very conscientious about how many micro decisions and steps you are creating for people when they're checking out. Sometimes it can be good to introduce those steps. It can force people to pause and think about, for example, which shipping method do I want? That's something that makes sense to give them choice in. But in general, we try to look at every step there and make the end-to-end process as seamless as it can. So this is just a couple examples, but I think that it paints a picture of kind of the full picture of UX and UI and what to think about. And you'll notice, like, as far as I've talked so far, most of this is not actual design, actual layout, because I think it starts from a place of being really critical in your thought and trying to understand your user base or your desired user base well, and really outlining the needs before you actually get started to design. So you don't need to actually be a designer. I myself have been self-taught throughout jobs that I've had, and really adapting this process of a design practice where you start from a period of research and user observation, or you start from a period of your own frustration and what you see out there. So some of those frustrating moments of UX that I shared as examples, if you can pause whenever you have an experience like that and just verbalize what it makes you, how it makes you feel, whether it's a negative experience or a positive one, if you can verbalize what is going on with that website that you like or don't like, then you can figure out how you can either reference that or avoid that issue in your own designs. And it's just, I can't stress enough how useful it is to really be conscious about that, because it starts to train you and you start to notice patterns among other websites out there, like, you know, all of them have the cart on the right. Why is that? And other brands that have, you know, a staff of designers or have a huge resource who have gone through and done user testing can also provide a lot of best practices for you to look at. And then you can also look and see, how do I make my site stand out and be distinctive, you know, in terms of the look and feel and brand. Okay, so site goals. First thing to think about is, you kind of know if you're launching an e-commerce site, you need certain pages. You need a product page, cart page, shopping catalog page. But beyond that, there are so many other things that can go into setting up an e-commerce site. A good thing to think about is just your product line. Is it a really large catalog, or is it a small one of a handful of products? Is it the kind of product that's an impulse buy or something that's really thought out? Are there any like complicated, you know, odd restrictions in shipping or selling online? Maybe it's a perishable product. It needs to be, you know, fridged, and maybe it's oversized. Maybe you can only ship certain days of the week. Anything that kind of falls outside our standard expectation of e-commerce, which, you know, is always progressing towards like more efficient, more quickly available now. If there's anything that falls outside of that, write those down and create language about them that will become a process for how you will sell those things and communicate to people the shipping of those things. Because as long as you can communicate and set the expectation to your users, these are not issues to be aware of, but there are good things to keep in mind as you come up with the design for your site. So I'm just going to go through a couple of examples with you guys, and I'm going to actually share the full screen here so I can get multiple tabs in. Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple examples. First, I'm going to do a large catalog and a thoughtful purchase. So when I say large catalog, I'm talking about, you know, a site that has hundreds of products, for example. Wayfair is one of those websites. It's an online furniture company. And it's also what I would call a thoughtful purchase that's being made. It's not something I'm just going to buy on impulse, like a sofa. You know, it's usually going to be a higher price point item. It's going to require me to deliberate on it to see if, you know, this item will fit into my space, blah, blah, blah. So one of the things that I think is interesting about this website, just to go through it with you guys, is that there's a really large area for, as we get into Black Friday sales, different promotions that are cycling through this navigation. There's also some little animations that are drawing my eye to the most important message. A common thing in a lot of e-commerce sites is you'll have what we call an announcement bar appear, kind of rotating out, usually a promotion, or communicating a free shipping offer. And then there's a lot, actually for my taste, a little too much going on this page, but a lot of animation and things like that. And that's just a personal preference, but it does work in terms of attention grabbing. The other thing about it is they have this very large drop-down mega menu. Because they have so many products, each tab opens up a whole series of other tabs, and then within that they're grouped under different levels. So it's really robust. I immediately understand that they have everything. Then my challenge is, how am I supposed to find, if I come here, how am I supposed to find what I need? And I think for that reason, their search bar is really prominent. So, you know, one thing that I notice when I put in the search is it immediately gives me predictive options for certain keywords. Oftentimes with these search functions, if I misspell something, it will autocorrect me. All these things are saving me time at the end of the day. I can also search by a photo. So this is a really advanced and really robust website, obviously for a much bigger brand. You'll see that as I get into the shopping experience, the process of narrowing down, there's so many filtering options. I can clear them, I can add them, I can, you know, do a quick view of something and sort of compare products side by side. But then, you know, also when I get to the product page, if I go to full details here, I just see so much information about this product. Because it is a high price point and it is something that is thoughtful, they spend a lot of effort in reassuring people of every single detail about what this product is and what people can expect. I can see when I might expect to get it in my, when it might be shipped. I can see promotions that are happening. I can see the aggregate reviews. There's upsold complimentary items that I could add to my cart. There's sort of services that also make me feel like, wow, this company has everything, you know, covered. There's a number where I can call somebody to have my questions answered. And then there's a whole bunch of expandable information about the product, from the specs to the description to similar items, you know. So it's really a very large and advanced product page that makes sense for an item that has you know, a thoughtful purchase behind it. So one other example I'm just going to share is this website, Long's Jewelers, which is a website we developed. It's a jewelry website, so also has a very thoughtful process in there. You don't want to like really deal with returns, exchanges. You know, you want to try to limit that. So with these higher consideration items, there's so much energy that goes into reassuring people. What they've done is they have sort of a 360 rendering, so you can really see the product from all sides, and you can kind of turn it and manipulate it and zoom into it and whatnot. There's a way for me to contact people again. That's something we see a lot of, especially the live chat. Sometimes people just would prefer to chat somebody instead of email them or get on the phone. And then there's sort of a customer promise of you know, what makes this brand stand apart? Why should they be the place you buy your engagement ring instead of another place? It's a local business, it's a family business. They have a great rating from the Better Business Bureau. They have a whole process in place for selecting the finest, you know, gems. So another example is of this product page where there's a lot of content aside from just the description underneath the fold, as we say. So testimonials that reassure people and whatnot. So you can look at your product page and just think about, what are the common hesitations or questions someone might have before I buy this? And it really depends on your product. You know, it can vary. For things that are high consideration, you might think about incorporating more content and reassuring moments on that page. For things that are more impulse buys, like, let's see, I'm going to give the example of, you know, a cell phone case, okay, for example, or an Amazon purchase. When I go to Amazon, as I'm sure you guys all have done, I can use the app as well, which I can't show right here, but I love the app experience because it just makes everything so easy. I can buy now, it saves my information. I can basically check out with one click, and I don't have to think very hard about whether I should buy the batteries or not. Of course, Amazon sells a lot of different things, so I would say that their product page are kind of a hybrid of the impulse and the very detailed, you know, thought-provoking checkout process, but they'd never sacrifice, you know, how easy it is to just check out and add to cart like that. Another example is Peel. This is a cell phone company. They sell cases. Again, not something I really have a lot of thought that I need to, consider, go and ask someone, should I buy this or not? It's a low price point. It's going to match my phone. It's in stock and ready to ship. And you can kind of compare, some of the design language, some of the choices that I'm being given. In general, this site, this product page is a lot more minimal and less cluttered than the others that I showed you. There's just nothing to distract me because they really just want that checkout to be one and done, all set. There's a couple of trust builders here, like the press they've gotten and, a little bit of additional content about the brand, but this isn't really that, crucial to my buying decision. And most everything that I need is just really right up here in this little bit of text. So when you have an impulse purchase or something that's a little bit smaller, you can be a lot more direct as well. But I think it just goes to show a little bit of the range and kind of the elements on each product page that we're seeing here, because there's just so much different, so much inspiration to be had. At the same time, you do notice there are certain similarities across all of them. So often the image is on the left and the text is on the right, and that's because we want to maximize the horizontal screen real estate of what people see when they load the page. Even just scrolling down to look at everything down below, most people are not going to get this far. And we've done heat mapping, which is when you sort of look and see what the user behavior is on an actual site, and just most people don't go down and read the full page. They scan it, they look at the top. So you do want to focus a lot of your content, the most important content, and the add to cart button above this, fold, so to speak. That also goes for mobile. And then another thing I've noticed across them all so far is that the headline, the product name, is really prominent. It's the first thing that my eye goes to because of the size of the type. The second most prominent is typically the price. That's pretty typical. Those are just the two things that people want to know. Hey, what is it? How much is it? Am I on the page that I'm on? And then you can see how, especially with the type, the smaller type is less important, but still good to have. And so there's a hierarchy that's being created with the design, where your eye will go to the naturally largest type, and then next to the smaller type or the more subdued type. The other thing I really notice on this page is the add to cart button, and that's just a general rule of thumb. Anytime you have a button, which we call a call to action, you want that to be a really prominent moment on the page, something that the eye won't miss. Sometimes the good UX or UI of the site can be, people will spend a lot of time and energy just testing different colors of this button, testing different words that go into the call to action, add to cart, checkout, shop now, whatever it might be. So this is really used as an accent color, and I think as you go through, many of these other sites, you'll see with Wayfair, it's purple, that's their brand color. The purple is always used to communicate some kind of action that I can take that's kind of primary. So it's a link underline, it's the add to cart button, that kind of thing. So that's one of the things that you can really take to heart, the gold. Using that brand color and extending it through the areas of the site where actions need to happen is a really easy way to communicate to people through design that this is the important thing to do. This is a color that shows you that you can click on this and something will happen. And again, it's just really like a very basic idea, but it goes into our intuitive design habits as people, where we start to create parallels between the experience that we see from either shopping throughout the whole website, universe of Amazon to everywhere else. We start to notice that button is always sort of a prominent, and it's always kind of there. And I can expect that to happen on most e-commerce sites that I go to. Okay, so next, if I just, sorry, I think I have to just share my screen with the full screen, which I thought I was doing, but I will share it fully. Okay. Is this visible? I think it is. I guess if it is not, someone just put that into the chat notes.
We can
You
see
can
your
see it?
entire web browser. Yeah.
Okay, good, great. Because I'm going to shift between the presentation and then some, some examples. Okay, so just looking at some of the previous examples we saw, you can kind of start to also nail down your technical scope. So we've started talking a little bit about the common, sort of ideas and commonalities between different websites. And as you train sort of the powers of your eye and start to observe these things, you're going to also start to notice, what are the things I actually want on my website? Reviews, for example, could be one of those things. What are the features that we want? And when we say features, we mean partially the UX, but also like the actual, functionality. So like a feature example would be this, clicking the swatches gives me a preview of that image. Clicking this shows me a different set of content underneath, and just really nailing down the technical features. Because if you're going to be working with a developer or an agency, or you're going to be, even if you're just doing it yourself or amongst your own team, it's just really great to have this all nailed down. Once you have it nailed down, you can kind of form the bare bones of your design because you know the elements you want to include. So these are just a couple examples. Quick Shop, which I showed on the Wayfair example, really useful for a large catalog if you want to save someone a click to get to the PDP, but not really necessary on every single site. You can look around and see where that makes sense for you. Image gallery is almost always, needed. The more photos that you have of that product, statistically speaking, the more likely someone will buy it. They'll feel more comfortable buying it because they understand what it looks like completely. Video is also really great. This is one of those things that most people, even the clients that we work with, balk at doing just because it's so much effort to create a video. But if you can find someone to do it, if you have the skills to do it, even if it's not the most perfect video, it's such a big lift to trust and conversion in the website to show that product and how it works, especially if it's something like, that requires the usability, like say it's a packing cube, showing how it packs, showing how it works. Just can't say anything enough about that. And especially if you're doing additional marketing, which you should be doing, like social media marketing or ads, these are assets you can use in those mediums as well. So it's not just limited to the website. Email confirmations pretty much assumed to happen, but what are the ways you want to send those out? Is there automation that you need to happen? Is there a discount code that is getting sent to everyone? Pre-ordering things. This is something that a lot of our clients, especially the smaller ones, do because they have smaller batches of inventory, or they're not necessarily always sure when their inventory is going to land. They set up the ability to pre-sale something in advance. And that is a very interesting process because the UX changes a bit, where instead of add to cart, typically we'd say pre-order and expected ship date, and they can still buy, so they can still check out and give that money to you, the merchant, but just sort of as a pre-order. That's a great feature request example. Discount codes as well. How do you want to merchandise things? How do you want to sell things? Do you want to have a buy 3, get 1 free? All this stuff does need to be built, especially with a platform like Shopify. There's some areas where apps can kind of fill that gap. But again, the more you know about the technical needs, how you want to sell something, you're just going to be in such a better place to meet with that agency or developer, or kind of create, the layout of what you need to look at. The second thing is the brand. Not everybody we work with has a brand identity. So like they don't necessarily have a logo that a designer made for them. They may not have a set color scheme. They might have been using sort of just different things from here or there, or maybe they do have a designer in-house who's been creating that stuff for them. So you can kind of either pull examples of fonts, photography style, animation style, copy, layout, functionality from a brand perspective. And when I say a brand perspective, I mean, what is the feeling I'm getting from the website? So just going back through some of our examples, Here's a brand that we work on. It's called Claire Paint. It's a paint company. Their whole brand is about making the paint shopping process easier instead of being overwhelmed by choices of colors and having to paint actual swatches on the wall. Their brand is about ease. So they only offer 50 colors, and they also have peel and stick swatches that you can just stick on your wall instead of painting everything. So it's really no mess, no fuss kind of thing. And sort of you can kind of see how that element of their brand values of convenience, clarity, sort of a friendly approachableness is in their brand. So they have these colors, they have really clean photography. The font is clean, but it also has a little bit of like this edge, you know, it has a flourish here. It has a little bit of funky detail in the way that the letters are formed that make it slightly personable. You know, it's not alien, it's not too authoritative, it's not too clean or highbrow. It's pretty approachable. They have these pretty cute icons. They have a little bit of a hand-drawn effect. And even their photography incorporates the brand colors of the yellow and the blue in the packaging. So I see how the packaging looks. I see, you know, how the colors look in the swatches. And it's just a very cohesive brand experience. You know, everything that they've incorporated, they've included some of that color scheme in it. And obviously their fonts are pretty consistent throughout the website. So this is an example of one kind of brand feel, and it doesn't have anything to do, you know, it can exist apart from the functionality aspect, how the site really works. It's just about how I feel when I get to this page. Another example of a brand feel is Polaroid. I really like this brand. Very nostalgic, magical, you know, rich color. You feel the power of being able to create things yourself, and I think that also comes through in the brand. This font is really more decorative than the Claire site. The copy that they use is very direct, very, you know, using words like magical, wonder, holidays, tapping into like the nostalgia that people have. And their photography is really vibrant. It's very bright. It's sort of technical, but it's also very retro. So also, as you train your eye to look for things you like or don't like about the experience, train your eye to look at things that feel honest to what your brand is or what your values are. And then you can break that out into choices that you make around your typeface, around your photography. One of the things that I always do when I start a project is do a mood board, which is just a word for a collage, basically, of different examples out there. So I might, you know, I keep a running list of these websites that I like, and I don't like everything about every single website, but I might like this neon photo effect. So I'll grab that as a reference for a project. And it's really just a habit of learning how to borrow ideas and then make them into your own, make them feel cohesive into something new. So even the animations that I called out, for example, on the Wayfair site, very attention getting. But, you know, again, you could also have some animations like that are soft and very, you know, elegant and that sort of fade in as you go down. So you can kind of see the difference. There's also this like nice rollover here. You can just kind of see the difference between all these decisions that go into making you feel a certain way when you get to that online store. And again, remember, it's just an online store. There's no, you know, retail store where you kind of have music playing and you can see the site, you know, the products hanging on the racks, or there's maybe a smell. So you really have to like get into all these little details to truly take advantage of good UX UI to create this experience for people that feels immersive, even if they're just at their computer. This is a useful little sort of diagram of where I would say most brands fall on a spectrum, and they can include, you know, more than one of these. So fancy, formal, luxury, elegant, authoritative, technical, sort of futuristic, scientific. There's always clean and simple and modern. And that's kind of going to be the most common one, I think, for most of us, because you never don't want it to be clean in some way. I mean, you do want it to be a bit, you know, easy for folks to understand, not overwhelming. But then there's like this personality touch, friendly, casual, quirky, offbeat, very design forward. Figure out where you kind of fall on that line. And just to give you kind of an example of that, some of the examples I brought up, clean and simple. Everlane, I would say, very clean, very simple, very crisp, a little bit quirky, but not too quirky. Even when I go to their products, it's just very sparse. There's a lot of white space. It's very calming. The type is very straightforward. It's not super fanciful. It's white, it's gray, it's minimal. Quirky, I would say, you know, Polaroid got a little bit of quirk there. Technical, Peel, you know, and it's not just about the product, but I think obviously a lot of times the product informs the brand look, but it's a technical product. They have a technical style to their brand. The letters are sharper. The colors are very muted, black and white. It's even in their copy, minimalist essentials. I get the sense that this is a very technical, sort of less flashy, direct, you know, quality-driven brand. And then, you know, let's see, a couple examples here. Long's fancy, of course, that fits in with jewelry and sort of their level of customer care. Gempler's is the site I haven't shown you yet, but this is a site that we actually worked on at Hidden Gears. It is a sort of a tractor supply, big tractor supply, lawn supply store that during the process of the website redesign also was rebranding itself slightly. So had, you know, a lot of like loyal customers that, you know, previously the site looked like sort of like this. It was essentially started as a catalog business, and you can kind of see how the catalog style translated to the website. There's just you know, type is all different sizes. It's all over the place. It's very loud. It's a little overwhelming. There's coupons here. They kind of trying to communicate a lot at once. And it's also a really large catalog too. They have tons of products. So the navigation that they had was pretty overwhelming. These are just screen grabs because the site has changed now. Kind of like that Wayfair thing, took over the whole screen and created a lot of confusion. I mean, what's the difference between nozzles and wands versus parts and accessories versus pumps and faucets, you know? So we really tried to simplify a lot of this, and in doing so, the brand changed a bit too, because in doing our user research with folks, we learned that people who were new to the company didn't know what they actually sold. They just kind of guessed based on the products that they saw, but there was no real message that said, hey, this is what we do. So we tried to incorporate this, which right now I think in the older versions was kind of bland and definitely felt like authoritative because of all the information that they had, but wasn't too exciting otherwise. And then from a mobile usability perspective, very overwhelming because of the number of products that people had. So this is an example of how we reworked that. This is what one of the category pages, the collections pages, used to look like. And it was essentially another side menu of more items to pick from, a short description, a couple products that were most popular, and then a feed. The feed of actual products in the category didn't start till way down here. And everything was sort of floating around kind of in this white space. And it worked pretty well, but there's definitely room for improvement. Another thing that was an issue is that all of the collection pages, all these drop-downs looked exactly the same. So I didn't really know whether I was in landscape and nursery or, you know, a second level item or third level item based on the design. The design was the same. So one of the things that we did was we went into a icon-based nav with the top level items, which when you're on mobile, go into sort of a carousel here. And there is actually no further drop down on mobile. It only gets you to the top level ones, whereas on desktop, it expands into a menu. When I go to footwear, for example, or clothing, footwear, okay. Footwear, I get there the subcategories with a little bit of a visual to show me what that is. And then I can also shop by brand, because a lot of the customers we learned through our research and user testing were brand loyal. They just want, you know, Timberland boots. There's also a way we could merchandise and then make this a little more colorful with offers and resources. And then we get into the top selling products. And if I had an account, I saw what I had recently viewed or anything featured. So from there, if I wanted to drill down into kids footwear, I got into specific types. This was a small category, and then I could drill down even further. And that was just a way for us to guide people down through a process where they didn't have to click around too many times to figure out where they were. And then again, we also made the search really prominent because of catalogs with, you know, there's such a high number of products. Half the people who were visiting the site weren't even using the nav. They were just going directly to search because they knew the brand, they knew what they wanted. And so if you have a large catalog, making sure search is enabled is also really useful. So that's an example too of the friendliness, I think. You know, it comes across as a very down-home brand. We used the type that they already had, but we made it a little more standardized in terms of the size and prominence of the headers, the photos that they had, showing real people using the products, building the trust with the brands, and then also adding this little tagline at the top. It's an outdoor supply store, which honestly a lot of people just had no idea, you know, what that really was. So these are all components in sort of our process of doing a real website redesign, where we incorporated the look and feel of the existing brand to make it better to use on the website, the brand experience, how could we make it feel even friendlier? How could we make those values stand out even more in photography, in text, what have you? And then the functionality changed really radically, like the menu navigation changed, the display of the collections on mobile changed. All of that we showed later on had a very noticeable impact on the revenue and conversion that came through mobile and tablet. The desktop wasn't changed radically from a perspective of like the core functionality, but with the product pages that we did, there was a big change in terms of the cleanliness of sort of how that information was displayed so that it was easier to digest. So they sell respirators, they sell everything. We added these breadcrumbs again to help people navigate. The sort of order and hierarchy of the text again was cleaned up a lot, comparing this to the old PDP, which is short for product detail page, product page. Just kind of not very structured. And so we cleaned that up and tightened that up a lot so that the add to cart was also higher up on the page. You know, adding promotions, having a better image handling display here where videos could be supported, and then compacting a lot of the technical information into these drop downs so that if I wanted to find it, I could see it, but if I didn't care, I didn't have to wade through a bunch of text. And then sort of consolidating a lot of the recommended items, which I think otherwise there would have been about 30 shown on the page, into a still 30, but tabulated into this kind of concise way. So that's just a little bit of an explanation of sort of the brand, the user, the functionality, and how that can all come together. I spoke a little bit about user needs. We did surveying for many of our projects. You don't have to be intimidated by that. That's something that can be done in a very ad hoc manner. The only thing I would say about surveying and user research and demographics is try to get a large enough sample size where your results will actually be significant. So don't just ask 5 people. Try to get an example size that will represent your actual users and be at least, you know, 50 or 100 if possible. And you can do this through online tools. I can actually update this deck to send you a couple examples where people will just get paid a nominal amount to go through certain tasks. So for example, when we did the Gamblers website, we asked people who were existing customers of the site different questions than new customers. We asked people to go and find a wheelbarrow and buy it and talk through the processes they were buying it. And you just really get a lot of insight into how your existing website works. And it's not to say that any one person is right or wrong, but as a collective exercise, you can pick out trends. So this was one of the things with the Gamblers website where we picked out a lot of trends that most people were frustrated by the amount of products. Most people were frustrated by the lack of some of the items being out of stock and on back order, not being very clear to them. It did say on the old product page they're back ordered, but people would just miss it. That was a design issue. And the other thing you can do if you have anything with your site currently that's hooked up to Google Analytics, of which my partner Paolo is leading a workshop later, you can actually look at your existing user behavior, their demographics, like it's anonymized, but roughly speaking, men, women, where are they located, what devices are they using, are they iPhone users, and all of that stuff. And it can help you focus also your energy on designing for that specific person rather than just sort of throwing in the kitchen sink. So then, you know, once you have your needs nailed down, you've taken notes on the brand look and feel, you've taken notes on the functionality, you can kind of start to order that information on the website. And I showed you a little bit about sort of the hierarchy of example being the PDP, the name of the page, the product, the price being the next important thing, the add to cart being the next important thing, the images being easy to see, and you can get a sense of sort of the best practices there from looking at various websites. All right, so let's see. Ordering the information in terms of the homepage. What's the first thing people want to see is typically who you are, what you do, and what you sell. Can you consolidate that into one splashy image and one sort of tagline? And a lot of this is an exercise in just distilling down the information so that it's really digestible at a quick glance. The next thing is, again, to always create trust. I mentioned a little bit earlier that anytime someone is experiencing doubt or decision fatigue, they tend to just abandon the site. That's what we call abandonment when the user leaves the site, when they don't check out. That's the term that is used. It's sort of a sad word, but user abandonment. So we want to try to limit that. There's always going to be abandonment. It's just part of the process. But if you can just tweak that experience to increase it a percentage point or two, you'll have a real difference in how much conversion you get in terms of those sales. So always based on trust and accountability. Conversion rate is number one affected by how well this is conveyed through your website. A lot of the common and expected UX patterns of an e-commerce site, typically speaking, I mean, rules are sometimes made to be broken, but typically speaking, the cart is always on the upper right hand of the screen. It's just where people expect to find it. You don't want to make it hard for them to find their cart. It's typically not worth, you know, doing something new and different for that to happen. The contact information is usually found in the footer, either written out or linked somewhere. Contact FAQ, and sometimes there's multiple ways to contact someone. They have a chat function. Gives me tons of reassurance, especially if it's a product that I'm not certain about. I'm going to try it before I decide to keep it. It's going to cost a lot of money to ship it. Having ways for people to contact you easily, and number one, is useful to them. Number two, it shows that you are not just a random faceless website. There's a person at the other end of the line. Clicking the logo takes you to the home page. That is just an expected behavior we see a lot of the times. The ability to adjust the cart items before you check out and review the cost. I've actually experienced a couple sites recently where this was not the case. I actually added something to the cart and I was charged, and I didn't have the opportunity to look and say, do I want to add some more things? Do I want to change the order? Can I review it before I commit? So you always want to give people that moment to review stuff. And I'll just go back and do this one more time, because I think what we do here is a little extra confirmation of the user experience saying you have successfully added this. Here it is, here's the availability, and also you know, the quantity, you can remove it, you can check out. There's a little assurance about the price match here. I also expect to see shipping and taxes. Here it's saying shipping and taxes calculated at checkout. That's pretty typical. In fact, it's only the way it is for Shopify sites where the checkout is handled in the cart, because they cannot give me shipping until I put in my zip code, and then the price would calculate here based on all of that information. Typically, you know, being able to search items or find them easily in the nav is expected. the navigation being intuitive. So one of the common pitfalls we see is that people don't name the top navigation items very clearly. It can be a whole exercise in and of itself to think about what are the words that really describe my expectation when I click this. These are very clear, but I have seen sites where, you know, it was like explore in the top nav, and I don't know what that is. So make sure the nav is easy to understand. Mobile and cross-device use. Always look at your website on mobile or on tablet, just, you know, as we all experience things through multiple different devices, and mobile is much more challenging to design for than the desktop just because there's less space. So a lot of times people overlook, you know, how does the site respond and change as I change my screen? This kind of gives you a little bit of a sense of the mobile. You can see that the mobile nav starts to appear here at a certain point. And it's a slide out menu. So, you know, there's just a lot of different things that are mobile specific you don't want to ignore. The links and the buttons, they have consistent styling. Headlines are the same size if they're the same type of information. Buttons that indicate an action are the same style and color. There's no need to create sort of different aesthetic experiences just for the sake of aesthetics. You always want to think about the functionality, because if I'm sort of using your site and I've used this site multiple times, I know the red is the checkout button. And then, you know, say I change this to black, I might just not see it and then abandon that checkout. So you just want to make that consistency very prominent. And then the returns and shipping information can be found easily. It shouldn't be a mystery to me whether I can return it, how to do so, what the shipping timeline is. All that stuff helps ease the process along. In addition, reviews and testimonials, huge help in conveying trust on your website. Real people using it, validating their reviews, even better if they have photos of the product in use. Great thing to have. Physical location and phone number, similar to what I mentioned before. You know, even if you don't have, say, a retail store, put up a picture of yourself or the team that's behind the company. Talk about how you source the products. Put a face to the name. It makes people feel like they're engaging with an actual group of people behind the brand. Return and shipping, it's great for these to be generous. Users typically now expect things to be, you know, free to ship. Obviously here in Hawaii, that's always a challenge. If you can and find some way to allow free shipping or conditionally allow free shipping or generous returns, it's what we've seen in our experience is that it can be the number one you know, like low-hanging fruit to hit in terms of getting people to check out with a free shipping deal. Because anytime someone feels like they're getting a good deal for free, they want to take advantage of it, even if in the end they are spending a little bit more to get it. Try before you buy and split payments. You might have seen on a lot of websites the opportunity to order something, receive it, try it on, and then decide to buy it, even though you already have the item. You might have seen the option to split up a payment across 4 installments. A lot of times that's used for higher price points, but not always. And that's something that is removing also burden for people, whether it's the high cost, whether it's the guesswork of will they like it or not. It's creating a service that's really an added value. Along with added value, some of the websites that I showed, you know, had I think Wayfair example is good, had additional things that they could give me aside from just the product. I could get assembly. I can get expert advice on, you know, maybe the style or item that I want. I could get, let's see, maybe from another example. For example, one of our apparel clients offers styling advice as part of their clothing store. Think about the other things that'll make you sort of stick out, because a lot of that comes down to customer service. It's not just loyalty from the product and the product being great or the website being great, but what is the customer service experience like? Is it really adding value to people? Another example, content-wise, would be, recipes. If you're selling something food-related, do you have a little free recipe for someone? Just those added touches that create delight in the user experience. Sampling. If you sell something that can easily be sampled at a low cost to you, that can be a great way to get people to understand the product before they need to make the leap to buy it. Storytelling about the process, the product creation, the people behind the brand values. Maybe you have another component where you're doing good work in the community. Really step back or even ask the people in your life, what do you think it is about my brand that is different and unique? And write language about that or document it in photography and put it up on the site. More and more and more people want to feel like they're making a choice when they buy something that says something about themselves. And a lot of the times now that is translating into values like sustainability, social good, made in America, locally made, anything like that. If you can hone in on what your values are and whether they're true to you and whether they are in your product, having that storytelling brings people along that journey with you to feel like they're in it with you, to feel like they're supporting you with their purchase. It's just about more than just buying. So, and that is the way a lot of people are shopping now, and it's not likely to change. So harnessing that power of storytelling is really important. Chat. Something that you can set up with an app, really nice if you have the bandwidth to manage it. You can turn it off and on, be available to people. We see a lot of chat users that can help close the sale because you have the opportunity to talk to somebody, which you otherwise would not. I know we're getting close to the hour and we want to leave some time for questions, so I'm just going to hurry on through these last couple of things. Again, mobile and accessibility. This is a great little diagram that I love about the size of our devices, and it obviously always changes as devices are released, but they rely on one thumb, two fingers to reach everything that they need to reach. You see certain design trends like these nav items down at the bottom because they're closer to your thumb on mobile. You also see a general trend towards larger touch targets for buttons, larger type, things that are just easier to read on smaller screens. And also, spacing. So here's another example. Even on this screen, which is a laptop, this is so much easier to read for me. And I'm, a younger person without a vision impairment, but I think, it's just really important to focus on designing for the more accessible, legible format, and considering that on mobile, everything is smaller, everything is kind of just, you're easily distracted. You want high contrast, high legibility, easy to find touch targets and buttons on the phone, and considering where people are using that. And accessibility is also just also translates into conversion because we all lose our eyesight as we age, and we also are including in this design practice people who have other disabilities, whether they be physical or mental. So technology has come really far. You can allow people to shop online that maybe wouldn't have physical access to do so because they can read the type on your screen. The standards have changed to emphasize accessibility, and it just really includes those users, which are a sizable portion of our community, and allows them to also partake in what you have to offer. So just to round it out at the end, I have a little bit of a resource link of some of the sites that I use in my work. And this will be shared with you guys as well. Again, going back to that design, this is sort of a nice overview of patterns. So it'll give you a product page example, and kind of walk through why it's set up the way it is using examples sort of like I showed you guys, and an analysis of why it works and why it doesn't work with examples. Great place to look for inspiration, to look for examples of how to do something. Another one is UI Garage, really nice little examples of, sites out there that show, oh, here's a way you can kind of compare a pricing table while showing the difference between those levels. So you don't have to start from scratch. There's so much out there. Again, it's just about training your eye and looking and seeing what makes sense for your brand. Accessible color generator and color contrast checker. These are both accessibility tools to determine whether a foreground or background color and in your links has an appropriate contrast for the accessibility guidelines that I mentioned. The Shopify blog has a lot of content, but these are a couple articles that I think expand upon the ideas that I mentioned with other examples to inspire you. And then Eric Kennedy, Learn UI Design, is a online lecturer who writes a weekly newsletter. He mostly writes the newsletter to sell a course that he does, which is also really good if you want to get even deeper into UI. But just joining his newsletter, you'll get a lot of really great tips from him as well. And this is my contact information, akemi@hiddengears.com, our website, hiddengears.com, and our social media. We are here in Hawaii. We hope to work with more and more Hawaii merchants. So you're always welcome to find us and keep in touch. And thank you so much. I think we have a bunch of questions here, so I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and check on those.
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking me. Yeah, so we're ready to take questions, and we have a couple of good ones that came in, but I'm just going to go all the way to the top from SK. He's asking, what are some of the good sites to create stores online? I have a big cartel site, but I'm not able to alter much on it. You guys
Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah, so we really work almost at this point exclusively with Shopify, and the reason is because we feel it is the best existing platform out there for most people. So Big Cartel, a lot of these other sites that actually have been around longer than Shopify, some of you might be doing WordPress e-commerce, don't advise because content sites like Big Cartel or like WordPress and then other e-commerce sites are not as modern when it comes to like data, security, and privacy. WordPress, for one, is very susceptible to attacks, hacking. Shopify is PCSS compliant, so it's very secure. And it just, I think, design-wise and UX-wise, the admin experience, which you don't really see in my screen, but it's very intuitive to use. And it has a ton of robust features. So you can have merchants on Shopify who are doing maybe a hobby business on the side, of the scale of maybe an Etsy shop to 30 million a year online. It's really robust and can scale. And the other e-commerce platform we see people using a lot is Magento, but that is a much more advanced, high effort platform to set up. So I'd say you could get pretty far. I don't know the scale where your business is at with what you have, but at a certain point, you'll probably, assuming your sales increase, you'll probably need to transfer to a Shopify type site.
Great, I completely agree. Let's see, we have a question coming from Joseph. He's asking, what are any significant design considerations for a service company site versus a product site?
Right. So I did talk a lot about e-commerce and the ultimate goal being sales. But if you're a service business, a lot of the times that goal is, instead of sales and checking out of buying a product, it's lead generation, getting someone to call you, getting someone to book a service, or submitting a form to inquire about the service. So depending on what that service is, it might be the kind of thing where you would rather have somebody get on the phone with you, and then you can really get them to commit or sell your service to them on the phone. It might be something where there's so many questions that you need answered to determine how to serve them that a form with the qualifying fields makes sense first to kind of weed out the right folks. And so a good example of a service site, I guess I would say any restaurant, sort of like any restaurant experience, like an open table or something, is to book a table or to call or something like that. It's all of the same principles I said in terms of, I think that they're the same in terms of UX UI, but you're leading people down towards a different type of action than checking out. You're just leading them down to submit a form, to call you, what have you. I hope that answers your question.
Great, yeah. I think you showed us one of the e-commerce sites where they had a bracelet and there was a 360-degree display on it. So Eva is asking, how was that done?
Oh, so the way that that was done is that there's actually a lot of smaller photos that are stitched together and animated to create that view. So it does require a good amount of photography sort of assets, because you're basically animating all those photos through this app. But there's also a lot of new developments in Shopify for sort of visualizing products in a 3D way. So you can look into the App Store. Shopify has a really robust app ecosystem and find 360 product viewers. They'll either need those photos as still images, or you can also be in touch with agencies that will take your product and shoot it with special equipment to render it. But the reason you don't see it too often is because it typically doesn't, the return on investment isn't really there unless you're selling something sort of higher end where it makes sense. Yeah, and Shopify does support that now natively.
Okay. And then Eva's also asking, for video, I mean, having it on a website, does it, she's asking whether it's challenging to load, but I think another question to that is whether it would affect any of the, the download speeds of the web page itself.
Right, good question. Yeah, it can really be a drain on the site speed if you're hosting that video on your site. So typically what we do is we actually advise people to host their video content on YouTube or Vimeo, because number one, they can then, if they're using those marketing channels, it's another way for people to find them. And then it's actually embedded, the iframe or what have you is embedded into the website, but it's not hosted on your website, so it's not a drain in terms of your data. So that is a way that we typically recommend that to be done. And if you are familiar with uploading to Vimeo or YouTube, usually there's going to be an embed link that you can insert into your page. There's a bit more maybe development work around supporting it natively, like in a product carousel or something like that. But it can all be done that way without draining your speed.
Okay, I hope that answers your question, Eva. Well, she has another good one. Do you suggest search bars are good to have on smaller sites as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. It doesn't necessarily make sense if you have a small number of products. That's a good example of, I think, where we see people wanting all of these features, but not necessarily thinking about whether it makes sense. So if you have 10 products on your site, a search bar, depending on the term I'm putting in, might only yield me like one result or no results. And at that point, it is a frustrating experience for me. So we really recommend search to be for larger catalogs where it provides a shortcut to people searching for something, or maybe you have, conversely, like a lot of repeat orders for the same thing, and it's just faster for me to go to that. So yeah, definitely not necessarily something that fits for everyone, because if you only have a few products when you get there, it's like kind of a strange experience to get to a dead end.
Yep, makes sense. Randy's asking, are there paid themes worth buying on Shopify? And he's also asking which theme is best for both function and design.
There are paid themes worth buying. Most of them, I would say, are going to be, you get what you pay for. In terms of the paid ones, will generally be built better. Out of the Sandbox is a theme developer that creates a lot of themes that are pretty tried and tested. Pixel Union is another one. So different companies have, better reputations for creating good themes. The thing about themes, especially the free themes, is they tend to include everything in them, which sounds great, but ends up kind of becoming a bit of what we call technical debt or bloat, which is when you have a lot of stuff on your site that you don't actually need, slows it down, creates dependencies. It's just it's not a very clean way to start off. As far as which theme is best, it really depends how much you are going to do yourself. If you're going to do it yourself, look at the themes from those two companies and figure out which ones you mostly like in terms of the navigation, in terms of the product page, the image handling. Those are the things that are the hardest to customize or would need a developer to customize. So you don't want to like buy a theme and then have to redo it. Try to look at that. We use a theme called Debut a lot, but we mostly use it because it's very bare bones and we can customize it further. So if you're not doing it yourself, I would recommend that one to work with a partner on. But yeah, it's a very personal choice.
Okay. Eva has a question regarding multiple platforms. So she's thinking of having a storefront on Amazon, Shopify, Etsy, and basically asking what's your take on that? Any comments on having multiple storefronts at the same time?
On the Amazon, Etsy sort of platforms? Yeah.
Amazon, Shopify, Etsy.
Amazon, Shopify, and Etsy. Okay, so Amazon and Etsy are marketplaces where you can create a storefront within that company. Shopify is a platform that you can use to create your own site full on. So the difference between the two is that with Amazon and Etsy, I'm not so sure about Etsy, but I know that with Amazon with both you have very limited access to who your customers really are. We've had clients who've transitioned from Amazon to Shopify and essentially had to rebuild their customer base because they don't get that information from Amazon. Amazon owns the customer information. So when it comes to marketing their site or saying, hey, follow us to our new site, they just have no way to connect with those people. So you sort of sacrifice that level of connection with your customer when you're on a marketplace. However, you, in theory, should be getting other benefits from being on that marketplace, like access to their customer base. However, there are so many other merchants that it can be very competitive. So there are some people who do, we work with that do both, but they spend more energy on their own site because they want to be in control of their brand story and they want to have that customer base. And then they might sell on Amazon to kind of like add on to that. But I don't think, again, I think it depends on the product, but most people that we work with prefer to do it on Shopify if they can handle the workload aspect.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I hope we answered your question, Eva. I think she had another one about chat function for sites, and she's asking if there are free plugins for that.
There are. I'm not sure off the top of my head which we use. A lot of them hook into, if like our clients might be using a customer service widget, such as like Zendesk or what have you, you can just use one of those because then it funnels the communication into like a ticket system. So if you do have some kind of customer service process in place, I would look at what makes sense for that when you're picking out your tooling. Once COVID hit, there was a lot of like new app development on Shopify, and there are various apps that do it. So again, I would refer to the Shopify App Store and look and see the ratings because they are all reviewed. Shopify Chat is one that's used a lot, but you really want to look and audit like this level of support that you get from people too. There are numerous ones out there. See how much people have used them, if they've had a good experience, and if the support system is good.
Have you guys worked with the Facebook Messenger? Because I know they're pretty active in pushing out their chat function for.
No, I haven't actually worked with them that much. Yeah, mostly because like it just depends on whether certain people consolidate everything through Facebook or not. Like I said, most of our clients use like a Zendesk type integration.
Okay. Vince had a question about security. He's asking, is there a layer of security built into the e-commerce website design, or is it handled somewhere else in the build?
So with Shopify, you as the merchant don't have to worry about any aspect of security. That's handled by the hosted platform Shopify, which is one of the benefits. So everything past the cart into the checkout, which I showed briefly, is customizable by you. And then the checkout itself is all handled by Shopify. So the payment gateway, the shipping fees you set up, but they handle that money securely. And then they also will flag and sort of have an algorithm for flagging orders that appear to be fraudulent, or unusual checkouts or anything that might be a bot behavior. So they'll flag that for you, so you can determine whether or not it's really something to be concerned about. So we've never really had an issue with anything in terms of a large-scale fraud or chargeback issue situation. If anything, the biggest risk is that it is a hosted platform. Well, it's not a big risk actually. I mean, it's a lesser risk because you don't have to be worrying about the server going down. But as a big company, sometimes their server goes down and blips a little bit, and so they always work really quickly to restore it. But that's sort of one of the push-pulls of having a hosted service.
Great. I know Wendy from Maui Sweet and Spice, and we all know she's talking about Wix and how she likes the platform. Any thoughts on that?
Haven't used Wix a ton personally. I know it's great for, and I've seen, Wendy's site. She's done a lot with what she has there all on her own and through the Wix sort of educational content that they put out. Yeah, I think, one of the things that we always say is that a Wix, a Squarespace, WordPress, they're a little more approachable in terms of being able to DIY and almost do everything that you can in terms of customization for the design. But they do prioritize that DIY audience over sort of running a business and like in terms of the needs of transacting online and all of the sort of security hangups. So Shopify is good if you really think you're going to focus on really selling through your site, and that is the main goal of the site. But if it makes more sense for your business to have that design flexibility to kind of facilitate other content, like have a lot of recipe or a blog content, that's where I think some of the folks that we work with prefer to work on a DIY platform, because you can get really far with that and you can really hone in on your processes and what makes sense for your company. And at a certain point, you might need to re-platform, but re-platforming is, it's something that happens often. We just try not to do it when we don't have to, because it's a big switch over. So yeah, I think it's a good way if you're starting an e-commerce company or you're just getting started to kind of figure out without a ton of investment what's going to work for you. And I know that Wendy's done wonders with what she has so far.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions from the audience? I think we're kind of nearing the time here. Okay. So if there aren't any other questions, again, I want to thank Akemi for your time today. And if you enjoyed today's session, you found it helpful, I would encourage you to attend the rest of the webinars that we have planned. We will leave a link in the chat box to all the other webinars. And I know Paolo, who's also from Hidden Gears, will be talking about analytics in December, but you can sign up for it now. So definitely go check out the link. And we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. So again, thank you so much, Akemi, for your time today. Oh yeah, just a reminder, this session is recorded, so we will share it with all the people who have registered as well.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Akemi.